car was destroyed because, again, the thing was like a piece of
tin foil.
Yeah,
That's why I asked.
No, he was fine, but can't say the car was gone. And it was right after that Bob pretty much said, I'm done again.
So what'd you do?
So I'm sitting at the apartment. Linda was working for an orthodontist, and there was a local businessman that had some late model cars, Bill Terry. They called him Big Daddy. And he got in touch with me and said, what you doing, baby boy? He called me baby boy, too. And I said, I'm doing nothing. He said, I know you didn't move up here to work on late models, but I tell you what, you come out here. All he did was run a couple of cars at Greenville Pickens every Saturday night. He said, you come out here and work at my shop. We'll go race on Saturday night. We'll go back to the shop. I'll pay you $400 cash, and you tell me if you want to work the next week. It's like, I got to make some money. That sounds good to me. At least I'll be racing until something else can come along. Mm-hmm. So we got to late July, early August. I'd been doing that for about 2 months, and we were having fun, winning some races with a guy by the name of Donnie Bishop down there. Mm-hmm. I noticed one night there was a guy I recognized, but I didn't recognize him. He kind of kept hanging out around the back of the trailer. And after the race, we loaded the car up, and he came up and introduced himself as Bobby Hawkins. And he says, what are you going to do moving forward? You want to get back in cup racing? I said, there's no question. He said, well, I don't know if you know it. I own the car that David Pearson drives, the Chattanooga Chew car, the 16 car. And he said, we're trying to hire somebody to work on those cars. He said, would you be interested? And so I went and met with him the next week, and this would have been early August of 83, and the shop was in Spartanburg, in David's shop, and I was actually one of the only few people in the shop that didn't have the last name Pearson. Yeah. It was David and all of his boys, and I was really the only guy that worked for Bobby. The boys worked for David, and it was a very cool deal. I mean, I'm working for the Silver Fox for David Pearson, and limited schedule. Only ran about 10 or 12 races a year, and I was about to get married in October that year, so it was really the perfect scenario for me.
I did not know you worked on that car.
I did, yeah. The end of 83 and then the entire 84 season.
Wow. Dang, man, that's pretty cool. So what was – God, I kind of vaguely remember that being David's last few years in the Cup Series. What was working in that program like? I mean, I know obviously it was pretty awesome to be around David Pearson, but from a competitive standpoint, and did you guys meet your expectations and objectives, and what was sort of the fate of that program? I
think with the status of it, with the money that was being spent, and with, to your point, David kind of being at the tail end of his career, and he was not a young man by no means at that point. And only running, even back then, it was still hard to run a limited schedule. Yeah. And, I think we were meeting the expectations of David and Bobby Hawkins, and quite honestly, even the Chattanooga Chew people. We knew we could go, and we were probably going to finish somewhere between 8th and 15th. Mm-hmm. We're always going to qualify up front, no question about that, with David Pearson, especially some racetracks you went to. But you knew that's kind of where you were going to run. Which was probably some of the best runs that I'd been a part of. And then again, I was still probably a little bit starstruck because here I am working with David Pearson on his pit crew.
What was he like as a person? Now, we know driver, one of the best of all time, but what was David Pearson like?
He was a lot of fun to be around.
Was he?
He really, really was. He enjoyed life. He had fun. He, again, running that limited schedule, he'd walk in there on Friday and he'd shut the lights off. He said, boys, we done for the day. And I'd go like I was going to leave. He said, no, I don't mean we're done here in Spartanburg, but we're done here at the shop. We're going to go play golf this afternoon. And he would not let me go home. I had to go play golf with him and the boys. Yeah. But he was a lot of fun to be around.
That's a good story.
Was he still running the short track stuff then? Because I know he had some short track cars.
No, because he had started running Larry, his oldest son, out of that same shop, and they were running all the Busch Grand National races. So that shop wasn't much bigger than twice the size of this studio right here, but we had 2 Cup cars, and Larry had 2 Busch Grand National cars, and we were running them out of that same shop.
That's wild.
That's a packed shop.
Yeah.
It was definitely 50 pounds in a 10-pound bag.
So Hawkins partnered up with Kenny Bernstein to form a race team together. How to bridge that gap between working with Pearson and Hawkins on that car, and then what they became together with Bernstein?
So at the end of '84, David knew '85 was going to be his last year. And I think he wanted to give it the best effort he could. So he took the Chattanooga Chew sponsorship to Hoss Ellington. Well, that kind of left that 16 car without anything. So, again, I was the only employee for Bobby. So we moved what equipment Bobby had in Spartanburg in one race car, tractor and trailer. We brought it back to Travelers Rest, South Carolina, right outside of Greenville. And Bobby said, I don't know what we're going to do. You've got a job. Just help me get all my stuff in order and figure out where we're at. Well, this kind of went on through the off season, and then we kind of get into the '85 season. And I went and met Bobby one day. I said, what are we going to do? I can't clean any more floors or polish any more rims. It's as clean as I can get it. And I'm just sitting over there twiddling my thumbs. And he said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, how about let's build a short track cup car, and let's see if we can get Butch Lindley to drive it. He said, you think you can get Butch to do it? I said, I do. He said, well, hire you a guy or two, and let's do it. So we spent the first part of '85 building this double throwdown short track car. Butch agreed to drive it, and we were going to go run Wilkesboro and Martinsville. They were almost back-to-back weeks, but we were going to go test Wilkesboro. And we built the car down at Mike Laughlin's and really put a lot of time and effort into this thing. Just tried to dot every I and cross every T. And I called Butch about a week before we were going to go test Wilkesboro, and I said, Butch, I need you to come by the shop here. We need to get you fitted to the seat and the pedals and the steering and all that. He said, can you wait till Friday? This was like Wednesday. He said, can you wait till Friday? Joan and I and Tanya, his daughter, we're going to go to Florida, and I'm going to run a late model race for Frankie Grill, and I'll come by there on my way out. So he stopped there Friday morning, and we got everything fitted, and he drove on to Bradenton. And we was working 7 days a week on this car, and I got home about 11 o'clock Saturday night. About 1:30, 2 o'clock, my phone rang. I don't even remember who called me and said that he had been in a bad wreck down at DeSoto Speedway, and his head had hit the wall, and he wasn't even sure he was going to make it.
Yeah.
And out of respect to him, we didn't go to Wilkesboro. Got this car here. Went and met with Bobby. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I think we can get Morgan Shepherd to drive this thing. So we hauled that thing up there on an open trailer.
What did this car look like?
It was red, white, and blue, 16.
Okay.
It had Carolina 2 on the side.
Yeah.
So we go up there to Martinsville, qualified in the top 5, and was running third. And halfway through the race, cut a left rear tire down and spun, and there used to be a small opening in the inside wall at Martinsville you could walk through. That thing caught that opening and ripped it like a can opener.
Oh, man.
Destroyed that car. So I go to Bobby, and I said, what do you think? What do you want to do now? He says, what do you want to do? I said, well, we got Morgan. Morgan will run some more races. Why don't we build a not a super speedway car, but a car to run Charlotte, Darlington, places like that? He said, let's do it. Spent the whole summer building this car. Me and another guy built it down at Laughlin's again. Went to Darlington.
When you say built a car at Laughlin's, like, so today we'll get a chassis, and we'll build this car from the bare chassis up in this building back here in my fab shop, and that's how most race teams are doing it, right? They're building their own chassis, and we get our stuff from Hendrick and build the chassis. But you would go to race teams didn't have chassis builders. You went to Laughlin to get your chassis. You went to Hutchinson Pagan.
Right.
And so when you say build the car, were you there? Would you build the chassis there with those guys and then put the body on it there and then fit it out and put the crush panels and all in it there? How far along did you go at Laughlin's before you'd bring the car home?
We would build it out completely because I was really good friends and pretty close with Mike, and we didn't have a lot of equipment at our shop. And again, there was only 2 employees. So Mike and them built the surface plate car, and then we put the body on there because he had some good fabricators. Sure. And then we just finished the car out because we had a lot more resources and stuff to work with than we did at our shop. It just made it.
Yeah.
And Mike, he ran it to the last minute getting us a surface plate car done. Never was on time with it. And so we built that car. Go to Darlington, qualified pretty good and blew up. Went to Charlotte and finished 7th or 8th. And then this is where the whole Kenny Bernstein deal came about. Ralph Seagraves was a good friend with a friend of Bobby Hawkins, a guy by the name of Clyde Brookshire. And Bernstein and Seagraves were tight because of the drag racing stuff with Winston.
Yep.
Bernstein had the sponsorship, Quaker State. He already had a driver tied with the sponsor, Joe Ruttman. He just didn't have a race team to take it to. Well, Seagraves got with Clyde about getting with Bobby to see if maybe there's a way that Bobby and Bernstein could do a joint effort here, since Kenny had the sponsor and we had the race team. So they put a deal together. We were going to go run Atlanta, and this is about 2 weeks out from Atlanta. And it didn't take long to realize they struck a deal, but it took about a week to realize Bobby was a phenomenal businessman. Bernstein was, but their philosophies was night and day difference.
Oh.
So about a week before Atlanta, Kenny and John Dangler, his partner, came to Greenville, went and played golf with Bobby. About halfway through the golf game, they said, we're going to offer you a deal you can't refuse. We're going to buy you out. And the thing that was flattering is Bobby agreed to do it under one condition, that they had to keep me employed for at least 1 year, which was very flattering. And so we went to Atlanta, actually still under the Carolina 2 banner, but that car was already owned by Kenny Bernstein, and we actually finished 5th at Atlanta with Morgan that year.
And you come out with the most job security you've ever had, probably, with a year, at least, a promise, or a part of a deal. I mean, like, that had to have been nice.
It was. It seemed like every owner I worked with, I became very close to.
Yeah,
and
sounds
that
like
was very overwhelming. That's the only way he would sell that deal, is if they would sign an agreement to keep me
That's
employed
amazing.
for at least 1 year.
That's a heck of a reputation that you had established. So, man, that is interesting. So that's how the Kenny Bernstein, like, this is when now what I remember. What year would this be? Like 20 or like
It was
80,
the end of 85,
86?
headed
Okay.
to the 86 was going to be the full season for the 26 Quaker State car.
So you changed the number to 26.
Yep.
Why did you do that?
I don't know where the 26 number came from. That's an interesting question. I have no idea where that came from.
Because I never would have linked the 16 car and the 26 together. Didn't
Yeah.
even know they were the same operation.
It was the same operation, but everything else about it was
Right.
different. Yeah.
So Kenny gave you kind of the keys to the kingdom, and you were the general GM type kind of guy.
I was everything.
Yeah. But you weren't the crew chief.
No.
And y'all looked for a crew chief. Had Inman was a possible candidate for the crew chief. Gary Nelson was a candidate. And then eventually Kenny Bernstein says that, hey, you ought to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, Kenny we came home from Atlanta, and he kind of saw that I was the guy in charge, whatever you want to call me, crew chief,
Right.
whatever. And he put me in charge of doing everything, getting the cars built, getting people hired, getting equipment bought. I was making hotel reservations and plane reservations. But he said, you're also in charge of hiring us a crew chief. He said, and I hope that doesn't offend you, but he said, I feel like we need to go to battle our first year with a seasoned veteran. And I won't say he gave me an open checkbook to hire this crew chief, but money was not an issue. Mm-hmm. The issue was where we were located. Nobody wanted to move to Greenville, and nobody wanted to commute 2 hours each way.
Sure.
So Kenny came to town early January, and we were about a week away from going to test at Daytona, and had the 2 Speedway cars all but done, ready to go test. Rockingham car's pretty good shape. Everything's looking good. And they came to town. We went to lunch, and he said, give me an update on everything. And I updated him on everything. As I said, Kenny, I have emptied the bucket, and I cannot find a crew chief. And I said, it's not money. It's where we're located. And him and John kind of looked at each other and chatted for a minute, and he said, we know why you can't find one. I said, you mind sharing with me why? Because I've exhausted every effort I know. He said, because we got the guy sitting right here at this lunch table. Me? Oh, he said, you can do it. He said, I've watched you. I watched you at Atlanta during that race weekend. I've watched you this whole off season. You can do it as good as anybody. And I said, okay. If I'm going to walk this plank, you're going to walk this plank with me. You're not going to bail on me halfway down this plank. And I still talk to Kenny today. I'm indebted to a lot of people, but no question, he probably goes to the top of the sheet because he took a chance on a guy that nobody else would. And I wouldn't have blamed anybody. I'd only been in the sport for 4 or 5 years. Closest I'd been to Victory Lane was walking by it on pit road. So.
I know, but 4 or 5 years, he packs a lot into 4 or 5 years. I mean, it seems like you might have had 4 or 5 years, but it seems like you had 10 or 12 of experience at this point.
Or maybe
You
20 or
lived a life
25,
already.
yeah. I felt like a cat that was living 9 lives.
Listen, if you've watched that video but haven't checked out our podcast, what are you waiting for? The Dale Jr. Download is available for free on major podcast platforms.